Yes, talking about getting text messages, um, and that when we get them, then the mind will respond or react. In this particular case, you're talking about that the messages came in that reaffirmed and confirmed your sitting practice.
It was a, I guess you could say, a meaningful coincidence. You know.
Hmm.
So,
Well, in a way, that's kind of what we could say that we're looking for. We're beginning to pick up on the fact that a lot of things happen coincidentally. There, besides that word, there is the word synchronicity and serendipity
yeah,
that I talk to students about,
yeah,
and that when we see it, basically, we appreciate that two events happened, but we don't know what the mutual cause was,
no,
or even, in fact, if there was a mutual cause.
no,
But we do know that things happen like that. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is that how we feel is not dependent upon a text message. That's an important point. That I just uh, had a chat, took 3 hours with
I, wa-
Steve and Dan Ingram.
I watched it last night. So
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, in the beginning of that, there was a discussion of the Majjhima Nikaya, the sutta called the Great 40, but it's basically about um, looking at how the Eightfold Noble Path actually operates. And in one of the statements, actually, it goes through it in great detail in the sense that one's right effort is to take on right view and to abandon wrong view. And then later it says, and one's right effort is to have right thought based upon that right view, and then to abandon the unwholesome thoughts, which is exactly what I've been teaching all along. And that this is something that a lot of us miss because we spend so much time in unwholesome thought that we're actually trained into it. We're trained into being critical. We're trained to worry. We're trained to see things as dangerous. It's part of the culture that we were raised in. Western society does that. Thai society has its own disadvantages, but this is something that I see in the Westerners a lot. That we have a mind that's trained into what actually that is advertised as critical thinking. And so, um, what we're practicing here is the effort that it takes to change the mind out of those old unwholesome thoughts and giving ourselves new wholesome thoughts. Except that as we begin to, let us say, develop the skill of the determination of what is the wholesome thought, our thoughts get even more wholesome. That one of the ways of looking at it is that people will say, well, the ordinary junk thoughts that I have, they're not particularly dukkha at all, and therefore they're okay. And the answer to that would be yes, but they keep you out of a state of sukha. They keep you out of feeling well-being, that there is an ordinary drudgery that in fact has some restlessness and some worry and that kind of stuff. That's why those thoughts are there. You could call it actually the monkey mind. It's just jumping around. And
yeah,
so the more alert we are to that monkey mind and recognize that it's thinking about the past or the future or work that needs to be done or things that are not around us, then that's why we want to develop the skill of sati further so that we spend more and more mind moments right here and very pleasant right here, right now. So now that you're back on the path, we can begin to see that it's actually not the sitting practice, but that the sitting practice is nothing but, let us call it a dry run or rehearsal for a concert. And that concert that we're going to give is the concert of our life.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
100%. 100.
all the time. And so if we can have that joyful music going all the time, the only way to develop that is to remember to keep bringing it back and bringing it back and bringing it back. And whenever you recognize that it's not there, we don't dwell on, oh, poor me, it's not there. Instead, we say, hot dog, I remember now, and here it comes.
This really helped. Like yesterday, say in the sitting practice yesterday, that I guess I was kind of in a stream of thought, for a good few minutes, and even then, I could compare myself to, say, like other sittings where you think, nah, I was on the ball, I was sharp. Even then though, 3 minutes. If I was lost for half an hour, doesn't matter. Never mind. Come back. And there's something about that. Even if you've had a big chunk of time missing,
Mm-hmm.
coming back like that, it's great. I don't know. There's something. Sometimes even the more lost you are, the feeling of coming back is kind of even more pronounced. It's
Exactly so.
such
It really is like coming home. It's finally I'm home.
yeah, whew, yeah. And it was all just a bad dream or something like that. That's kind of how it felt.
Hmm.
It's,
A way of thinking about it is that it's actually just a journey. The Buddha uses that example. In fact, he has 5 examples of what the mind is like when it's free from these hindrances, including this mental journey that we go on. But he talks about it in the sense of, um, let us modernize the story rather than having camels through a desert, which is the old way of looking at it. But just traveling on an international flight. Many people have a lot of luggage. And when they carry a lot of luggage, that means that they have to guard a lot of luggage. And they have to worry and fidget with the luggage when they're eating or when they're at the gates or wherever they are. They've got to manage all of that luggage. And it's actually quite a chore for them. So when they finally get to their destination, one of the things that's very characteristic is for that person then to drop all of that luggage without even unpacking it and perhaps lay down on the bed with a big sigh. Glad that journey is over.
yeah,
Okay. So we can see that, in fact, with the monkey mind, that the monkey mind is almost all on a journey. He's got to go travel and do stuff. Um, and carrying a lot of baggage around. And one of the ways of looking at it is that perhaps the reason that the monkey mind is jumping around so much is because it's being chased and it's afraid of something. So if we can get that monkey to come to the point that it's not afraid, it won't be jumping around so much. This is why with Anapanasati we want to dwell on that quality of safety and security. Because if we can actually generate that feeling of well-being, of being safe and secure, that will actually condition the mind. Those feelings of well-being and nurturing will condition the monkey mind to settle down on its own. And yet, a lot of students will see it's the other way around. No, I've got to throttle that monkey. I've got to stop that monkey.
no.
By
So
grabbing the monkey and trying to stop the monkey, you're chasing the monkey. Guess who's chasing the monkey? Guess why the monkey is running?
it's good. Yeah. But it's the same to say with your parents. That your parents are trying to they want you to behave yourself. So when they shout at you and scream at you, you're more scared, so you play up. You sort of, you know, in that particular instance, you want to be made to feel safe, and it's all right.
Exactly.
then the kid's more likely to, he's acting out because he's scared. I've seen that in myself, and it's just unskillful parenting, I guess. It's yeah.
Well, then with that unskillful parenting that we, let us say, were introduced to and dwelt with as a child, that becomes our main role model.
Yeah.
Not only for dealing with children. For instance, the new daddy will begin to behave over the years just like his dad did when he was growing up. Yet when he's a young man, he hated his dad, didn't want to be anything like him. By the time he's 40, recognizes he's just like him.
Yeah.
Okay. This mechanism that creates that situation, or in fact, you could say that creates that destiny, is the fact that after we hear the parent, we begin to rehearse what the parent ego state said. In other words, all the remembered rules, laws, would, shoulds, ought tos, and that kind of thing are then remembered, and when, or let us say, applied and then remembered, and then that gives the child inside of us some new job to do that we may be rebelling from. You've heard, no doubt, about the word procrastination, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's the point about procrastination is that this is procrastination is actually a series of dialogues between the parent and the child. For instance, the first thing is the parent says, "You got to go do something.
Yeah. I don't
You
want
got to
it.
go do X," right?
I don't want him,
And
Mum.
then the child inside says, "Oh, I don't want to do X.
Yeah. I want to play with my toys. It's like,
I want to play with my toys. I want to be okay. I don't want to go do X." And then the parent ego state comes back with, "But you ought to do X. That if you don't do X, something bad's going to happen." Well, now we've got two problems, right? Now, not only do I feel bad now, but then the parent ego state is promising us impending doom.
this is like, is that a super ego, like the Freudian? Is that what he's talking about?
I'm talking precisely super ego out of Freudian psychology, and in Berne they call it the parent ego state. But the Buddha refers to it as the Silavata Paramasa, our attachment to all the laws, rules, and rituals that we've had our whole lives, that we keep telling ourselves what to do, and by doing so, making ourselves miserable.
I know that kind of confusion sometimes when you really don't know how to act. You're kind of frozen in you're paralyzed in terms of you don't know how to act or how to be in a certain dynamic with certain people or doing a certain thing. That can be quite painful, just not knowing what to do. And I can kind of imagine, like, you got your parents all shouting at you, and you're frozen like this, and it's
Right. That's a state that kids get in. Or another state is that the child will be, let us say, also frozen in fear, but they're also weeping and crying and trying to, that kind of thing. And in that state, the child can't think at all. And
yeah.
all they're doing is dealing with the terror of the impending doom that the parent is about to bring on, because the parent, in fact, may already have a belt or a coat hanger or a switch or a yardstick or a ruler or something out to hit the child with,
Yeah.
terrifying the child.
Yeah.
When the child is, in fact, terrified like that, he's frozen, just as you say, which means that there is no possibility of the child being able to do what the parent is demanding of him right then.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Seen it.
Me too.
Yeah.
And so that is what that frozen in fear is also confusion. But that's another reason for, or let us say, an underlying way of looking at procrastination is that we're literally frozen because we don't know what to do, but we are still told by that parent ego state that we've got to go do it. I don't even know what it is I got to do, but I feel the urge of confusion over what is needed or what's my job, what's my responsibility right now.
I think just talking about it, I feel as well that sometimes, you know, with the internet and kind of when you've read like a million different self-help books, you've got all these different, like you've got 10,000 parents in your head and they're all telling you different things. And
Hmm.
this can be quite confusing. Like there's all these little nuggets of snippets of words that you've read or something, and they come into your mind, and that can be quite confusing. So I guess
Yes.
you're relying on um,
In in real life, that parent ego state is actually packed up with a whole lot of real people that the child knows. Uncle Fred, Grandpa, Grandma, first grade teacher, preacher, Sunday school teacher, teenage kids older than he is, the
yeah,
whole thing. Everybody's going around telling that kid what to do, and he's trying to keep track of all of these rules, trying to figure out how to maneuver among all of these rules,
yeah.
knowing that if he breaks it or if he screws up, he's going to have impending doom, that somebody's going to come down on him. And that's how we're raised.
Yeah.
It's a tragedy.
It's brutal, isn't it? It's brutal, you know. It's brutal. It's
It is. We just don't understand the brutality of our own existence.
no,
But there is something else about that parent ego state, and that we should begin to look at that too. And that is that the original mommy was a nurturing mommy. That there is, in fact, a nurturing quality of the parent ego state as well as this critical part. And so this is why we're going into the nurturing, because it's in fact it's that nurturing part of our parent ego that we want to turn on, as opposed to the critical part of the parent ego state.
yeah.
That in fact, if we understand what we're talking about, let us put it this way: most of the ways that parents have told us what the rules are is by telling us what the rules are.
Yeah. Not showing us.
It's verbal.
Yeah.
Therefore, when we tell ourselves in that remembered way what the rules are, we also recognize that it's verbal.
This is you know, like I guess like when your mum and dad are fighting a lot when you're growing up, and then you start acting like your dad in that situation. You hit your sister or something, and then your mum tells you off, but she doesn't tell your dad off because she's scared of him. And it's all it's all these different values. Like, and you kind of you're like, oh, he can get away.
That's right. That's even more confusing for a child is when he actually begins to act like daddy and mom smacks him, but she doesn't smack dad.
She smacks you. She smacks you. You can't smack dad. So
Right. So there's a lot of that confusion in there, but both dad and mom do almost all of their communication with verbal, not with the actual smacking.
yeah,
Smacking is actually rare. It's the threat of the smack, and that's delivered with verbal. Okay, this is an important point because this is how it helps us to understand what the Buddha is talking about. Is that it's this verbal part of the mind that goes around ordering us to do stuff, making judgments, etc., like that, that we've fallen into the habit of acting just like our parents, who acted just like their parents.
yeah. But it's outdated, isn't it? It's not about this infinitely complex kind of, or I guess simple, I guess you could say, kind of hit like the here and now, isn't it? It's not. These are coming from
That's
the
exactly right. It's not about now, it's how things ought to be
yeah,
that are not now.
yeah, frozen in time in 1986 in the living room of yeah, yeah, you know, it's yeah,
Right. But even then, it was delivered as the future.
Right.
Okay. That I'm smacking you now because I want you to be good in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is what I mean. This is why this meditation is so helping, because you see through that. You know, you're starting to undercut, you know, these rules, rites, and rituals, these habitual ways of thinking. There's something to contrast it against, you know, rather than being lost in it and thinking this is the truth, this is reality. No, it's not. It's just a dream. You know.
Right. That's it. That's waking up. This is why so many Westerners are confused about some Buddhist teachings. In the sense that here's easy way to see a strange contradiction, and that is the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. First noble truth: there is dukkha. This is it. This is dukkha. Right? That's the first noble truth. Then the second noble truth is this is the cause, or these are the underlying conditions of dukkha. So that's the first and second noble truth. And yet, when the concept of selflessness or no self is applied to the point of sunyata, that brings to the point that dukkha itself doesn't really exist. The only dukkha that does exist is between the ears.
Yeah.
Dukkha is what the human being manufactures.
Yeah.
But then people will get confused and say, well, why would the Buddha say there is dukkha when in fact dukkha is an illusion? Because it exists in that illusionary form. And that's the problem. It exists in a delusionary form.
But you don't have to suffer. It's good.
And you do not have to suffer over the delusion that you mentally create, and the manufacturing tools that we use to create this dukkha is this verbal dialogue. Actually, it's a thought dialogue, but it's not all verbal, because in fact the child part of us, the deeper part, doesn't communicate with thought.
Non-verbal.
It communicates with feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when the thought is I ought to smack you comes as a verbal thought, the response to that part of the dialogue is the cringing feeling, protection. Okay.
Yeah.
Just like dogs have a very, very sophisticated vocabulary, even though they don't talk a whole lot. But even when they are barking, there's many different ways the dogs bark. If you listen carefully, you can hear that it depends upon, and some people can't tell the difference between a dog barking to say hello and a dog barking is you step another inch closer, I'm going to tear your leg off. And they can't tell the difference between this. Okay, so this is also the way that we can think of is that the child in us communicates in a primitive language.
It needs re-educating, doesn't it? Like this is kind of what this is.
Well, rather than even thinking that we can educate the child, what we can do instead is manipulate the child.
Yeah, make it feel safe.
Okay, from making it feel safe, exactly. Making the child in us feel safe, feel secure, feel satisfied. These are the feelings that we want as a response to the verbal thoughts that we give ourselves.
And it's possible.
So now we want to give ourselves the verbal thoughts that are nurturing and not critical.
Yeah.
And we want to remember to do that on a regular basis.
Yeah. And that's where the sitting practice comes in. You're starting your day like that. You're telling yourself nice thoughts. It's okay, Steve. It's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. And then you take that into the day, and then you get into a little bit of a fluster. You maybe go into one of those hell realms, anxiety, that hell, that journey through the hell realm on the mental plane, I guess, you could say, in between. And then, because you've been
practicing. Wakey, wake up.
Yeah, exactly. that's why it's so cool. Because it's
Right, it is, right. And so, in fact, that hell realm that we actually wandered into was only real when we were in it.
yeah,
When we wake up to it, we recognize, hey, that's delusional.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost crazy that we feel so bad when there's no reason to at all. Things are marvelous.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I must be. I'm not. You know, this is sticky. Whatever this thing at this one at the moment, it's quite sticky. It's a bit of a to and fro, but I'm loosening it. Like, you know, by being nurturing and coming back, it's loosening in it. Like, it's loosening its hold on me, and that's what I meant about that text message. It kind of, I know it could be any kind of cause, but I guess I made it mean in that I kind of made it mean because it felt good to me was
Yeah,
that,
and you were ready for that message. Boy, were you ever.
yeah, it was
And
like,
so it really, right, it
yeah,
really impacted you.
yeah, it's kind of confirmation that, you know, everything you've just been worried about for the last 5 minutes in that hell realm, that text message, as soon as you open your eyes from two different people, just disproved it as well, showed that it was delusional, you know, that, hey Steve, how you doing? I was like thinking, wow, they are so mad with me right now. Yeah, it was that's why it was. But I say the feelings were intense, you know, that anxious feeling. So, but it's not a problem. I'd say because I know the practice, because I've got something to come back to. It's you know, as long as I remember, I say I've got that contrast, you know.
Isn't that so common what you're talking about? Never mind the circumstances, but it is a common thought for us to just have a thought of someone we know. And then we have the longing, oh, I haven't talked to him in such a long time. And then the thought of, well, maybe he doesn't like me. That's why he hasn't called me.
Yeah,
Oh, poor me. What did I do to that poor man?
yeah,
Isn't that crazy that we go through that sequence?
yeah, yeah. You feel really insecure, like, and then yeah, this whole, oh, did I say that wrong? Did I upset him? Did I?
Hmm. So let me go see what all I've done wrong, and now we're just in it. I mean, there that monkey mind just is
Yeah,
spinning now.
yeah. I mean,
What
but
did I do wrong?
yeah, I mean, in this particular case, I did actually ask the person. He went, "No, mate," he said, "I'm just busy at work." That's what it was. I was going to text you later. You know, in that particular case, it was yeah. It's funny how it's just boom. I guess yeah. I guess you could say that. You know, it's just, well, it's just something to work on, isn't it? You know what I mean? Just something to.
Hmm.
And even if he was annoyed with me or something like that, I guess it's still not a reason not to feel good right now. You know, like, and we can sort it out. If there was a problem, we can sort it out. But not right now because I'm sat on the cushion, you know, for example.
Exactly, and not only that, but if we say um, it's already sorted out,
Right.
okay, just hang with me just for a second. If we say, oh, whatever it was between he and I is already sorted out, then there really is no place to go with it. And so the next time that I meet him, I have in my mind that whatever it was is already sorted out. You know, that works many times because many of the things that we thought was a problem, he didn't even think was a problem, didn't remember it, and it never was an issue for him to sort out.
Yeah.
And so if we just tell ourselves it's already sorted out, then we look at all the time and wasted effort that we saved by not trying to work out what it is that never needed working out in the
Yeah.
first place.
Holding an imaginary grudge.
Right, holding an imaginary grudge. Most grudges are like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's hard to recognize, and it works in the other direction when I recognize years later that, oh, I really screwed that one up. And then I'll reflect upon it. Some of those people that saw me when I really screwed up are probably dead. Others are gone. Many of them, if they took a look at me, they wouldn't remind themselves of that particular event.
I think
And
a lot.
some of them don't even remember me and don't remember the event or anything like that. So why am I sitting here feeling bad about something that happened years ago
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
nobody else cares?
It's actually kind of like it's almost like and I had this kind of like I realized this as well that you're like, actually, Steve, like you're not that important. Like people don't go around thinking about you.
Right. I'm not that important to those people. They don't care.
They're thinking about themselves. They're not really thinking about, oh, Steve said this to me, like, you know, not, like, not, you know, yeah, not everyone's going around thinking about me all the time, like how bad I am and all this sort of stuff. Is, you know, like it's they got
Uh-huh.
they're stuck in their own stuff, you know, in their own heads. So,
All right. Well, let me put this in what we just talked about in context so that it fits in. And let us put it into the sense of conflict. And that conflict has three possibilities. We have conflict avoidance, conflict resolution, and then conflict that turns out to be no conflict at all. Okay, that's not the same as um, ignoring it or denying the conflict, because that's the same thing as um, separating. You see, in the West, the whole idea is conflict resolution. Mommy and daddy will bring the two siblings together, tell them to kiss and make up. That happens at school. We're supposed to find some sort of community. Husband and wives go to a counselor. The whole 9 yards is built into our society as conflict resolution. In Thailand, they have a thing called conflict avoidance. Once two people are in conflict with each other, both of them will maintain a distance. I will never have to go back to that person and have that conflict remembered because he's going to avoid me as much as I avoid him.
yeah,
But that's got some disadvantages to it. The third way is to recognize, even if you see, if that person is in conflict avoidance, then if I can go to the point of there's no conflict at all, then I'm good regardless of what he is doing. If I have the point of view that my conflict is really no conflict at all, and then I'm good to go, uh, uh, perhaps the example would be to forget about it because there was no conflict in the first place. And that's not the same thing as forgiveness, because forgiveness is actually conflict resolution.
saying there was a problem, yeah,
There was a problem and it is now resolved. We're looking at it from, hey man, this problem that we've just created is delusional, just like all my other dukkha,
yeah, no problem,
and
man.
it doesn't need to be resolved because it's not a problem in the first place. Now, if that guy thinks that it's a problem and needs to have problem resolution, I can deal with that in the present moment when he brings up his problem because I don't have it anymore. You see, I've forgotten all about it.
Mm,
So, in that regard, forgetfulness about old dukkha is better than forgiveness.
okay, yeah,
So, Buddhism is not really big on forgiveness.
it's a Christian type
It's,
thing.
it's much more into, hey man, just drop it, forget about it.
Yeah,
There was no conflict in the first place. It's all in your own mind, anyhow.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you can kind of, you know, in your daily life, you're like, I'm really sorry, man. Like, I didn't mean to do that. And like to the other guy, no problem, man. It's because you're feeling really anxious and you're trying to sort of resolve that anxiety, I guess. You know.
You're trying to get rid of your anxiety by giving it to someone else.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And they're like
Isn't that interesting?
trying to give it to someone else. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Dostoevsky, Russian author?
I read, I read, uh, I read one of his books when I was in India. Oh,
The one I'm thinking of is Crime and Punishment.
that's the one I read. That's the one I read. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Recently, I have read a review on Wikipedia of Crime and Punishment, and the thing that I got out of the book so strongly, they didn't even mention or talk about in their review. But this is exactly what we were just mentioning in the sense that, um, very quick summary, the boyfriend of the housekeeper axe murders her boss. When the police are closing in on him, and he's feeling quite frightened that he might get caught for having tried to rob the woman and wound up killing her with a blunt instrument, an axe. When the police are closing in, he confesses to his girlfriend, thereby trying to give her his bad feelings. Oh, I feel so bad. I'm about to get caught by the police. I'm going to confess to you so I won't have to feel bad. And guess what? He ruined that girl's life.
But I say now she feels complicit, and now she's got a
And
secret.
what is she going to do? She's now guilty of being an accessory out of the fact. After the fact, if she turn him in, what does she do? You know, he's putting her in a hell of a quandary.
Yeah, moral dilemma. Yeah.
Okay. In essence, every one of us does this with whoever we're talking about whenever we're complaining, whenever we're trying to share our dukkha with someone else.
Yeah.
That's it. We're trying to share our dukkha so I won't have to feel it so much. But what we're doing is that we're actually intentionally taking a dump on someone.
Yeah. Yeah. An emotional toilet. Yeah.
Right. We're using other people as our own emotional toilet.
Yeah. I did actually tell someone that. I was like right now, I can't hear that. Like, yeah, because like, yeah, yeah. It sort of felt like the term like energy vampire sort of came to mind because you just felt, you sort of felt your life being sucked out of you because you were this emotional toilet, and you kind of you feel like you're trying to be nice and compassionate, I guess, and be like the shoulder to cry on, but you kind of.
That's the danger with compassion.
Yeah.
Is that it winds up somebody dumping on somebody, and now you both feel bad.
Yeah.
The example that I use is somebody's fallen overboard and they can't swim, and they're in the high seas and they're drowning.
Yeah.
And this guy on the boat, he sees what's happened, but he doesn't know how to swim, but he really wants to help, so he jumps in the water too.
Yeah. And they're
Okay,
both.
and now you got two people drowning.
Yeah. 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 It
So,
reminded me actually of in one of the comment sections, I think on the last on one of the videos, someone wrote about little kids in Syria, and I can't be happy if there's little kids in Syria sort of being blown up and stuff like that. And I kind of thought, well, actually feeling miserable isn't actually going to help anyway, is it? You're probably more in a better place to help someone if you feel good, you feel strong, you know.
Guess what? It's not the children in Syria that she's pining over. It's the Syrian children inside her own mind that she's pining over. There's the delusion of the dukkha.
Yeah.
If she were going to pine over the Syrian children, she'd have to go to Syria and do something about it.
Yeah.
So she's just sitting at home saying, well, I can't be happy. Never mind that Dhammarato is happy. I can't be happy because I've got sick Syrian children in my head.
Yeah, it probably makes you feel kind of more moral about yourself than you actually are. Like, kind of, I guess it's kind of.
Isn't it trying to take the moral high ground?
Yeah. 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 I mean, you see that a lot.
That I'm more compassionate than you are. There you are enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling bad because of those people.
Yeah,
but there's more. In fact, that higher moral ground that we're just mentioned, it has the other side of it is that how can you be happy when other people are unhappy? You have to wait and be unhappy until everybody else is happy, and then you can be happy too, because after all, you're in charge of all the unhappiness in the world. God told you you were.
Yeah.
So you've got to be unhappy until everybody else is happy, and then you can be happy.
This is quite a strong, unwritten rules, rights, and rituals, I guess, isn't it? That you have to kind of.
Some people carry that rule around with them, that they cannot be happy when there is misery in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, you feel guilty.
Unrealizing that all the misery that they've ever seen and known happened between their own two ears. That they don't know the misery and the suffering of the Syrian children. In fact, I can see Syrian children laughing and playing between my ears.
Yeah.
They don't all have to be hiding from missiles.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of what we do with it. But that's exactly right. These are the set of rituals, the set of laws, the set of rules that we were given when we were children, and we grow up with them trying to adhere to them, and all we do is we wind up feeling bad because of all of these rules that we have that we don't want to keep, can't keep, don't know how to keep. Nobody who was giving me the rules knew how to keep these rules either.
Yeah. Don't do as I do as I say, not as I do. Is that the saying?
Exactly right. Exactly. This is why it's all called a hypocrisy. Is all the hypocrisy is because I can't do what I know is right, but I can at least tell you what to do that's right and wrong. And if you do wrong and I catch you, I'm going to punish you. Just to prove to you that God will punish you, He's going to use me as an instrument to get you. And this is how the our basic whole society was founded upon that. Even though we take the God out of it, we can put other forces in there, but the whole idea is that it's kind of, this is the way it should be, got to be, ought to be, should be. And then in fact, reality is far too complex to make simple rules like that. That's why the Buddha's rule of just one rule of dukkha, dukkha nirodha is all we need.
Yeah.
And when I catch myself making rules, I can see that that's dukkha, and I can stop doing it.
Yeah.
Coming out of that judgmental mind and allowing things nurturing, everything's okay. There are no conflicts to resolve. There are only friends to be made. And this is something we have to keep in a nurturing way, telling ourselves over and over and over and over again until it finally seeps in, because the natural tendency is to go back, revert back to all of that stuff that we learned as kids.
Yeah. Yeah. There's decades of conditioning there.
That's why we call it practice
Yep.
or skill development. We have to have to develop the skill of being happy.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Happiness is a skill to be developed.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know. I've only heard that from you. You don't hear that. You think there's some.
Where do you hear that in society? Society's not going to tell you that. They can't sell you cars with a slogan, happiness is a skill to be developed, because then you won't buy their cars. Oh, I'll be happy without your car, thank you very much. That's my first skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're saying that, yeah, buy this thing and that makes you happy. They're saying things make you happy, or relationships make you happy,
Or education makes you happy, or knowledge makes you happy, or food stamps, or health care makes you happy, or whatever it is that we're trying to get from the government to make us happy.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a materialistic sort of way of looking at the world, seeking our happiness basically from the outside. While on the inside, we keep creating dukkha that we want the outside to come get rid of. Where in fact, the easy way to do it is, hey, see the delusion of your dukkha and sweep that away and be happy with how things are now. Then you don't need the outside world to come save you from your own mess.
Yeah. And the mindset of no matter what happens, yeah, so I can be happy if I want to be.
But you can, and you're practicing it, and you know that you can. And you're
That's
giving yourself permission to. That's part of the nurturing part that we get from that nurturing parent ego state, is to give yourself permission. It really is okay for you to be okay.
Yeah. And it's quick medicine. They say the results of the practice doesn't take long.
Right. Wow, what a relief it is.
Doesn't take long. And the more you do it, and when you do slip up, it's just easier to remember. I've come out of that 10 times already today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it one more time.
Right, exactly.
And then you kind of get, I guess, so you could get kind of disenchanted with these kind of certain mental states, like this anxiety that seems so real at the start. You know, it's a bit like, oh, here we go again. Yeah, you know, like, here we go again. Is that movie playing in my mind again? Yeah, and look what happens then. And actually, life keeps showing me that it's actually all in your head. You know, it's
Well, there's many little statements, and the one that you had is something that we can look at it. Here you go again. We could say that with different attitudes. The here we go again is one way, and the other one is the same as, aha, I see you.
yeah,
Or, there you are again.
yeah,
Here we go again. I see that.
yeah. That's good.
In military operations, they use the word incoming.
Yeah,
Okay, and naturally, the way that the civilians, when they hear the word incoming, they want to hide dangers. Okay, but the soldiers, especially the heroes, when they hear the word incoming, that means they got to get their gear. They've got a job to do. They're ready to go. Okay,
oh,
and
yeah,
so that's another way of saying it is incoming, or there those feelings go again, or aha, I see you, Myra. To be able to wake up to this stuff early so that you could do something about it. That's what the sati development is really all about, is to catch that uh, critical mind of that parent ego state with incoming with their missiles and rockets telling you what to do and where to go and how to feel.
well, you just don't get sucked into it. You know, you don't become that. I guess you don't.
Right, you don't become that. That's an interesting point that we don't stress so much. That in the mind moments of the mind, in the teaching that we talked about a long time ago of Paticca Samuppada about how the mind works, basically we can. The first mind moment would be the seeing with the eyes or the sensory input. The second mind moment is figuring out what that means. And then the third mind moment is when we become that thing through our feelings. When we feel it, then we the feeling leads to the grasping, leads to the clinging, and the clinging then becomes the clingor, or the clinging itself is the self itself. That we become selfish in our clinging to things. And when we're not clinging to things, then we're not being selfish.
Yeah,
And so that's a very good way of looking at it is that the clinging is what creates that self that then is in hell. And what hell is he in? He's in the hell of clinging. He created himself to be in that hell.
yeah. If I'm worried about losing my money,
My,
it's
my money. Then I am that money.
yeah,
Look at that. That we become that money. That money is me.
yeah,
If I give him that $500, that means I'm somehow less. Part of me left with that money.
yeah. So if so, a good test. If I'm not worried about losing anything,
Right, I'm okay. I can lose all the money and I'll still be okay.
yeah. And that's what I keep telling myself. You know, stuff like that as well. That's part of the nurturing thing as well. I think is, you know, in a nurturing way. You know, that's kind of like the acid test is what I keep, you know, saying. If I lose everything, will I? You know, the question is, will I still be okay? And the ideal that I want to aspire to is, yes, I will be, and that will be.
Hmm.
I think that makes you a pretty cool dude. Then, you know, it's
Well, that's actually quite well known. It's even a phrase I think Jesus is attributed to Jesus that though we gain the whole world, what good is that if we lose our own soul? Now, if you can take that and read it in Christianese, or you can look at it in from the way that the Buddha would look at it, is that in fact trying to gain that whole world, or if I am seeing myself as money, and the more money I get, the more me there is,
yeah,
then that's all we've got left is a big me. Okay,
yeah,
and that we've lost the real essence of life.
yeah, yeah. It's not so
That
much.
all there is to me now is the greed that I have for the money. That I'm not much of anything left other than unfulfilled desire.
Yeah, just every thought is about protecting that money, and it's
Hmm.
all your energy goes into.
Going it, getting more,
Yeah,
all about the money, exactly.
yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
It's not. it's not as good as people think. Having money, it's
Right. And in fact, that's something very interesting is that when people have very little money, they think they'll be happy if they got a whole lot of money. There's actually just a sweet spot. That sweet spot would be then just enough housing, just enough food, just enough clothing, and just enough medication so that we can have an easy, comfortable life. If we have too much money, then we start to worry about keeping that money. It becomes precious. We don't want to let go of it. We don't want to practice generosity because we all have a little bit of extra. When we recognize that generosity is a way of building friendship and joy and community and making my life better, then I'll be willing to let go of that. But if I see that's me, that if I give that guy that money and he's getting part of me, I mean, it's kind of what he would say is a zero sum game played with the money figure rather than looking at it as a win-win.
and
That
also
he'll be a whole lot better off if he gets that money, and so will I.
yeah. And you feel that if your kind of self-worth or whatever is wrapped up in the size of your bank account, yeah, you feel if your wealth's going down, you feel diminished. Like you feel diminished. You feel you're not as good as what you thought you are, or
Right.
worth as
So
much.
that's the creation of the self, and that's why it hurts so much, is because we think that we're the money that got lost.
Yeah.
When in fact I'm not that money. I'm okay with or without it.
You can see why you just feel like, you know what, if you want it, you can have it, because it's like I'm on the other side of the fence where I've got some money, and everything we're talking about is real for me. That you do worry about it, and people are out to get you, and all this kind of stuff. It's
It can be a real nightmare. That's what business is all about. Name me a business whose businessman doesn't have those very worries.
tell me about
And
it.
it doesn't matter whether it's pharmacy or automobile repair, automobile manufacturing, battery manufacturing, doesn't matter what business you're in. It is a literally for money, dog eat dog world. Or
Yeah,
actually, it's a cash eat cash world. And everybody thinks they're the cash.
yeah, it's true.
And so that doesn't mean that we can't do business, but what it means is that we can do it wisely.
Yeah.
Do it wisely based upon uh, cause and effect and seeing what's really going on rather than clinging to the money as if it were me.
Honestly, I'm working less now with this sort of COVID situation and the demands there. And I finished early on a Friday afternoon. This is the 6th Saturday I've had off in a row. I think not last year, the year before, I had 4 Saturdays off all year. Um, and I'm
And you're
just,
still quite able to survive. You're doing better without the work.
I feel better. I look forward to finishing at 3 o'clock on a Friday. It's,
Hmm.
funny. The less I work, the happier I feel. Funny that, but that's not. Like I said, it's and also because if you got less booked in, you can do a nicer job, so you get the satisfaction of doing a nice job, and rather than feel like you're just doing it for the money just to get onto the next place. It's just changed a lot of things, and but you're right. I have a lot of conversations with people, and most people, kind of in my circle at the car places I work at, is constantly, I don't have enough money, or like, oh, it's all right for you, Steve. You've got some money. It's and you're like, it's not as good as it seems. It's without trying to sound ungrateful, but it's kind of. I felt like I've had to go on a certain path to sort of see the dead end of it, really. To
Hmm.
the bucket list. You know.
Well, you can cultivate joy so that you can deal with those guys with joy. That just because they feel up and down, back and forth between the about around the monies that they're having, you can be good natured and have joyful feelings because the money is not in charge of how you feel.
Yeah.
You're in charge of how you feel if you remember.
Yeah.
And in fact, in the other way of looking at it, it's really not the money that's in charge. It's that old parent ego state inside the head that says you ought to go get that money. You need that money, that money. And so, even that is not really the money. It's the old tape in our heads that says the money is important. You got to go get the money.
It's funny you say that because that my granddad was a self-employed person as well. My granddad was self-employed, a self-employed painter and decorator, and just you saying that just reminded me. He was always telling me about money when I was a kid and that, and you got to look after your money, Steve, and you got to, and all this sort of stuff. I'd sort of forgotten about that, and I had a flash of my deceased granddad pop into my
head. Exactly so. So now we recognize that, hey, it's really not the money at all. It's the fact that someone, when I was a kid, told me that money was important, and I believed them.
And him saying, the tax man, the greedy tax man taking my money and all this.
I have to hate those tax men. They're bad people. Revenuers in America, they call them.
Hey, Dhammarato, I've just know I've got 1% battery. I forgot to bring my laptop charger in. I've got 1%
well,
battery.
That's all right. We've had a great time. Let's go ahead and finish this conversation now. And I want to congratulate you for getting back into the groove.
I want to thank you very much for teaching me this so I can put it into practice, because it's gold. It's really good. It's and I love the fact you said to me before that it's priceless, and that's because I've been so into the money for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I see the value in this because you give it for free, and that to me shows me how much it's actually worth.
That's how much it's worth. It's worth so much I couldn't possibly charge any money for it.
That means
possibly do that. I'd have to charge you $1 billion. That froze it right up. Steve, we will see you